In Christ alone my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand.
Welcome to this session where I'm going to teach you the basics of what I do with Lightworks. This is self-taught, and so there may be better ways of doing things in places. If you find them, do let me know. But what we're going to do is we're going to put together a service, which is what typically I'm doing. And we're going to put together a Complin service because those are relatively simple, but I'm going to do it from scratch. Obviously doing it lots of times I can just copy and paste things in, so that is a facility that does exist if you're doing things from previous ones that you've done, but we're just going to put together actually next Tuesday's Complin service. I have carefully pre-recorded myself well in advance of usual, ready for that, so that it will be, you'll get to see the final product for the actual service. So I'm going to call up Lightworks and then hopefully successfully share the screen, including the sound, because there'll be bits where we listen to the sound as well. So we can just call up Lightworks and just make sure that in my share screen we've also got hold of sound as well. Right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Brilliant. So what happens when you first bring up Lightworks is you will get a screen that looks, in your case, when it's the first time you're doing it, it will be completely blank. As you can see, I've made a few videos in the past, so I've got a number of projects. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to create a new project. Within those projects, you can make lots of videos, or you can have an individual project for each video. So for each individual service, for example, for Sundays, I tend to create as a project because it's got quite a few files. But for things like Complin, I do have my standard one and all the Complins go in there because I'm using some things repeatedly. But I'm going to do it from scratch. I'm going to create a new project and we'll call it something snazzy like Complin training or something. So you'll get this window that comes up and then you need to give it a name, which will help you. So we'll call it Complin training, so I know which Complin it is, and then just click on create. Don't worry about this bit that says custom metadata, just ignore it, just leave it as it is. It used to be a little bit more complicated, but now Lightworks does it automatically in this latest version, which was released this year. And just press create, and then you'll get this window come up. I'm going to try and keep things simple for now. Oh, Ruth just arrived, so let's just let Ruth in. Good evening, Ruth. She has seen a little bit of this before, so she'll know what that involves. So this window comes up, and the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need the files that you're going to work from. What I tend to do is I put all the files for anything I'm going to do into a single file on my computer, and then I've got some others that we access later in particular places, but just make sure your files are well organized because it just makes life easier. So you need to start off on this bit up here which says log, and then you need to go down to the bottom where it says local files, which is down here in the bottom left hand corner, and click on local files. We'll then be able to access where your files are. The simplest thing to do, and I put everything in my particular instance into videos mostly, so I will go down to within this, go to videos, I will find where my files are. You just need to remember where you've stored your files. So mine are in here, and I've got my standard set, which is Complin, Ed Complin 2021. So in here, are the various files that I will need. Now, what I tend to do is, as you know, and this was learning from the earlier stages, is to give people time to arrive on Facebook or whatever it is. It's quite useful just to have a little bit of music and a cover slide while we wait. So I've now gone to using a standard piece of music at the beginning and the end, partly because I like it, and partly it just makes it quicker and easier to do because I'm doing this so often. It takes quite a lot of time to do quite a lot of videos. So the things that I've developed just make it a little quicker and simpler. So that's the music that I use at the beginning and the end, which is May the Grace. So when you click on it, you then need to click on this button at the bottom that says import. You need to actually tell it to import. When you click on that, you will then have it within your folder here, ready to work. What Lightworks does is it doesn't sort of create a copy of it, it just links to where your file is stored. So if you move that file from one place to another, it will disappear from Lightworks because it no longer knows where it is. It's just going to where your file is. So it doesn't create additional files or take up too much space. The other nice thing about Lightworks, just to say, is that it automatically saves as you're going along. You don't need to keep on saving. The autosave is really good. And as you will discover, the undo button is your friend. So that's one of the files I need, but there are more files that I need. So we'll go back in and we'll find the other ones that we need. So obviously, in the same way as you can with anything else, you can select multiple files in one go. You click on them. If you press Control on your computer, you will then be able to select further files. So this is the video. Unfortunately, it's of me, but never mind. And this is me doing Complin. It's deliberately done slightly badly so that I can just show you some adjustments. I've always got an acknowledgement slide. So one of the things that's really important, obviously, is that if we're doing anything in the name of the church and so forth, is that I make sure we've got an acknowledgement slide where our CCLI licenses go and any acknowledgements of the material that we've used, because that is an important thing to do and is legally required. So that one there, which I've just highlighted, is just my cover slide at the beginning and the end. And then I've got some slides, as you know, I put some notices at the end with a bit of music at the end to finish things. So these are some of the notices that I need. So there's that one, and there are one or two others which I haven't got in here, but I'll show you. And then there's the service slide there. So we'll import those. So now we've got a whole series of files that we are going to be using to start putting together our video. So the next thing you need to do is you need to create the project that you're going to work in. If on your mouse you click on the right-hand button, you will get a drop-down menu. If you're working on a Mac, don't ask me how it works, but whatever gets you your drop-down menu that gives you the various things. And what you need to do is you need to go to Make an Empty Sequence. And this is what you're going to work on. So when you click on that, you can then name your sequence. So this is going to be Complin, 16th of Feb, 2021. Leave frame rate at automatic. Don't bother changing it. Usually what I find, as you know, for Sunday services, you're all recording things for me, and then I'm using that to put the videos together. Depending on the device you've recorded it on, you will get different frame rates. So if you just leave it at automatic, Lightworks sorts it all out for you and will make it all beautiful and seamless and lovely. So just leave it at automatic, and that works really well. You can choose the length of whatever it is that you're doing that you're going to work on. So for Sunday services, I usually give myself the space of 60 minutes. For Complin, usually, actually 20 is long enough because they're shorter services. If you find that it's not long enough, you can lengthen it. It's not a problem. And then I always just leave it on one video track and two audio tracks. If you need to add further audio and video tracks, you can do that in Lightworks. You can add them subsequently. That's not a problem. But generally, for most of the things that I record for myself and that people send in, they mostly contain one video track and two audio tracks. Some things which are done through Apple devices are a single audio track. It doesn't matter. When you produce the final thing, that's all sorted as well. And then just click create. And you will see we've now got a new window that's popped up that says Complin 16th Feb, and that's our empty thing. Double click on it. And it will open up this thing at the bottom, which is where we're going to do our work. You can see it's 20 minutes long because that's the length that I put it in. But just so that you know, because we'll use these at various points, there is a zoom in and a zoom out at the side of that, so that you can go in and out, which allows you to do some of the finer bits of adjustment when you need to. So the first thing that we need is we need the start. So I start with May the Grace, and then with a cover slide. And this is my cover slide. Now the problem is that doesn't fit, because the cover slide, which is just an image that I've created, and I've done this using PowerPoint. So I've made it in PowerPoint, but then I have saved the single PowerPoint slide as a JPEG. So you need these as JPEGs to go in. So you can create whatever you like. You can be as imaginative and creative as you like. And I will put into the chat, if I can find all of my various bits a little bit later on, a couple of links for images. Because of course, again, for copyright purposes, you must make sure that we can use those images legally. So I use two sites mostly, a place called Pixabay and a place called Unsplash. And I'll put the links into the chat in a second, once I can work out all of the various bits and pieces. But that allows you to then, all of those images are royalty free and you can use them. If you want to say thank you to the author, you can put a note in. I use so many, I'm afraid I'm not very good at acknowledging that, but you can do. But they are free to use and royalty free, so they are there to be shared. So that's where I get a lot of the images that I use as my backing from. This isn't long enough. If you go to the edge of something, you can then just simply drag it along and you can increase the size. I'm going to put it all the way across, or nearly all the way across. But the problem I have is that I don't really want something that lasts 3 minutes. People don't want to sit there for 3 minutes listening to the music, waiting for the service to start. So what I can do, and for those that have listened to Complin time and time again, you will realize that you get the first part of it at the beginning and the end of it at the end. So I've moved it just out of the way so I can play with it. Now I do a couple of things in connection with this, because I want nice gentle music at the beginning and at the end of this. At the moment it's a bit
Be with us.
So you can adjust the sound level, and if you go into audio, this allows you to play around with the sound levels. Now if you look over here, we've got a couple of boxes, so you can either put in a plus or a minus. You can decrease the sound. So if I put, for example, -5 in each of these, you can see that now the sound level is much lower. You can see that it decreases. And that just allows you to adjust sound. And it means that when you get different videos from different people, you are able to adjust the sound level so that it's approximately even across all of the different sound files. It just depends on how far away people were from their microphone, what device they're using, but we can adjust it so that the sound is reasonably even throughout, or where you want to, you can make adjustments. And we're going to make an adjustment on this in a moment. But the first thing, I'm going to pop back to edit and say, right, how long do I want? Well, I want it to go for a bit, but I want a nice finish point. So I listen to it for a bit. Right, that's probably a reasonable place to stop. Now, if you look over here, we've got some markers, an in mark and an out mark. We're just going to use one of those to start with. If you click on that, you will get a blue line. So that blue line is just where we'd stop, where I wanted it to stop. You now pick up the red one and move it across. So it's just basically covering this area. I can now pick up this and cut it off and move it. So I'm going to move that to the end because that's going to be my music at the end. Once you've done that, the easiest thing that I find to do is to get rid of the blue bit so that it doesn't mess around, because otherwise funny things happen. So just get rid of it until you're ready to do something else again. Now, we're going to go back into the audio. So show you one of the other little tricks that you can do. It's worth zooming in at this point. So I'm going to zoom in a bit. Now, the problem is that it's a bit of an abrupt finish. So if we play it, boom, stop. What you can do is if you set your little red marker here, now you can see that there's a white line which gives the average balance of the sound. If you click just to the left-hand side of the red line and then click again towards the other side, you get two little squares. This now allows you to adjust the sound just between those squares. And if you pick up the second square, you can now move it down until basically it will then go to mute. So that will fade. That will give you a fade at the end. So now, instead of that abrupt end, it fades out. And that just sounds better. Okay. Right. Go back into edit. So we're just back into the normal thing. And let's go and set this back underneath there. So that's going to be our first bit. That's going to be our last bit. Right. Okay, here comes the dreaded bit. This is me. So you just pick up the bit that you want and drop it in. And there it is. Now, what I do whenever I'm doing a recording is I give myself a bit of start at the end as I just sit there like a lemon for about 10 seconds. And I sit there at the end like a lemon for 10 seconds. It gives you just that little bit of clear space to play with if you want to. Now, what I do is not essential, but I've just taken to doing it, which is to sort of fade in and out from one thing to the next. So if we have a look a little bit closer in, you can see that basically in the sound file, there's nothing there for a bit. That's me just sitting there looking like a lemon for a while. And what you can do is if you move this over, and then I will move this one across a little bit as well, because you need to do that sometimes. And you will then create this breakpoint. If you now get your mouse over that and right click, you will get another drop-down menu. In that drop-down menu gives you the option for some transitions. The one I use is dissolve, but you can have anything you like that's within the menu. But if you just go up to it and click on it and say add at the bottom there, you will now see that there's this little grey box. So where before it would have just abruptly changed, you can now see it fades into the next
Evening
thing.
and welcome.
I just think that looks a little bit better, but that's purely stylistic. It is not essential. When you start doing this thing, you start noticing the things that people do when they're doing cinematography, and you watch television programs and go, oh, look, they don't fade. They just go straight from one thing to the next. So this is purely a stylistic thing. You don't have to do it, but I just happen to. So if you want to, and for some things, that can be quite nice. So for example, when I did Anne's memorial service and we had a lot of photographs, being able to fade from one photograph to the next just looked a lot better than just doing it abruptly. So it just gives you that option if you want to. And there are different ways in which you can do it. I then want to put the sound file so that it backs up onto that. And that will just put it into approximately the right place. Now, obviously, this is the wrong size. So again, you can pick it up. You can adjust the size down so that it matches. And hey presto. Now, I've got a great big gap at the bottom, at the beginning here, which I don't want. You can leave it there, and when you write this to a video, it will ignore any bits that are there, but I like to just get rid of it. It just makes it confusing. Again, if you right click on your mouse, you'll get a drop down menu. The first thing at the top is a segment command that says close gap. Click on close gap with the right button, and it does it all for you. All gone, all sorted. So the first part of our video is now done. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the sound on my video. So we're just going to go back into audio quickly, and I'm just going to increase the sound a little bit to make it a little bit louder. People can adjust their sound at home, greater or lesser, but if it starts off quiet, then there's a limit to how much they can hear. And being aware that some people may be harder of hearing than others, it's worth just adjusting that. So I'm going to adjust it so that it's considerably louder. It also means that that nice quieter music at the beginning then moves into the sort of the main service and so forth. So, right. Now, if you look at this, I look a little bit badly lit. This is always the problem with Compline because I'm doing it under artificial light and so forth. I try and do these services at the time when I would normally be doing them when I'm pre-recording, so that I am actually worshipping as part of it. It's not just I'm just not just recording this functionally. This is worship. I hope that sense comes across. So we need to adjust this so I don't look quite so garish. So I did deliberately make sure that the lighting, I can do the lighting better, but I deliberately not, so that you can see how you can adjust things. So if you go into this bit, the VFX, this basically is the video function, and this is where we are going to be doing quite a lot of work. So the first thing you can do is if you just go into VFX, you get the settings which allow you to change the video. Do this right at the beginning when you've got a solid bit of video. So for example, when I'm doing Sunday services, Noel does the same, we'll record the whole thing, even though there are people who will do interspersed parts. Because we can, as I did with the music, we can cut it, move it across, and insert the bit that we want. But if you've done the adjustment on your own video right at the beginning, then that carries all the way through. But if you only do it on one segment, then you would have to do it for each segment that you've got. So we're going to adjust this, and my basic rule of thumb is play with it until you get what you want. So you've got saturation. I'm looking a little saturated, so we'll just drop the saturation down a bit, and I'm immediately beginning to look slightly less hideous. The gamma also allows you to make things a little bit brighter and so forth. Again, contrast just allows you a little bit of adjustment. Brightness, you can make things brighter and so forth. And the gain is also just allows you to make things look a little brighter. So we'll go with that. You can play with those adjustments until you get something which looks a little better. It depends on what device you're doing it on, what lighting you've got, but you can make the adjustments to make things look as you would like them to. Once you're happy with that, you can go back to your edit and so forth. Right, we're doing reasonably well. We've actually, because this is Compline and it just runs straight through, and normally I don't insert very much else, we're doing well. So we got the various bits of service. Now I recognize that here I think is where I probably start trying to sing. So we're going to do two things here. First of all, we're going to say, right, I've got some singing and we want to add the text for the singing. So just check it where we are.
Ubi caritas.
Somebody might recognize that one. So we're going to put the words to go with it. Now to do that, we need to put markers in, because otherwise the words will just appear everywhere. And we're going to put the in and an out marker. Now we know that it starts there. So there's our in marker, which is the little blue triangle thing on the left-hand side underneath the picture of where we are. If we now move this along a little bit and see where, it looks like I'm still singing.
Deus
and stop, and put an out marker. So you've got now 2 blue markers. So this indicates the area where we want something to go. So we've marked this area. We're going to go back into VFX now, the video function. Right, this time we're going to be doing slightly more. And so we're going to go to this little plus. When you open this up, you get a whole series of different options. I'm just very quickly going to show you one thing, which I'm not going to make major adjustments with this, but if you want to change the size of your video and so forth, so I do this with Keith. Keith records in portrait, and so I just zoom in. If we go to the 3D DVE, you've then got changes that you can make. So you can change the X, Y, and Z positions. That means you can make yourself much bigger or much smaller, and you can move yourself around. Now, some people have asked, how is it that I get split screen? The way I get split screen is I can move this bit of video. I can then put a second video channel in, and then put another video on top and move that one in the other direction. And so you can create split screens. I'm not going to do much on that now. That's but just you are aware that you can if you wish to. But actually, that's not what I want to be doing at the moment. As I say, you can move all that around, but I didn't mean to do that. As I say, the undo button is your friend. Here is the undo button, and it's also a redo button. If you say, well, actually, I didn't mean to undo that, you can redo what you just did. But the undo button will allow you to go back several steps. It doesn't go back infinitely, so if you've really hashed things up, well, you're doomed. I'm just going to undo that one more time because I don't want any of those adjustments. So we're going to go back to the plus. And actually what I want to do is I want to put in some text. So on the right-hand side of that series of things under the plus is text. If you click on text, we've got some basic options: crawl, roll, and titles. Titles is basically, it'll just put a piece of text on there and it'll leave it there for the whole thing. I've now taken to doing that, as I'm trying to be a good boy when it comes to copyright and so forth, is just to put that at the beginning of music that we do on Sundays, to say, this is what it is, this is who's singing it, and this is who wrote it, and here are CCLI licenses. So I do a little title at the beginning, and I use titles for that. When I'm doing Complin for myself and Keith, when we're trying to sing something as part of it, what we tend to do, because it's quite busy with us singing, but you know, so you feel part of it, we put a crawl at the bottom. So if we double click on crawl, you'll now see that in our window here, we've got a thing that says crawl and a little green box has appeared. This now allows us to put in our text. Often I've got a standard set of texts that I've got, and I'm just going to see if I can find them. Where I left the words for everything. And if have I got Ubi Caritas or have I not? No, of course I haven't. So, not having that, I'll just type it in. You can type it in, or you can copy and paste it from something else you've got. So it's Ubi Caritas. Ubi Caritas. Ubi Caritas Deus. You get to discover I'm a terrible typist. Deus ibi est. Now, when I start playing it, you'll see that the words will crawl across the bottom.
Ubi caritas et amor.
And the problem is I've got multiple repeats of this, so we need to copy it and put it in plenty of times. And I can't remember how many times I sung it through, so. Few tips when putting this onto a background which is a little bit busy. So you'll see that you've got various options of what you can do. It'll standardize the whole thing. You can't do individual things, so whatever you choose will be the same for the whole text. I usually make it bold. If you then go to outline and enable an outline, then it will put a black outline around it, which again then shows up when you're on a darker background. If you need to, you can make that background even the outline darker, so you can just move that up to the top and it makes it a darker outline, so you've got a bit more outline. You can also, if you wish, change the position of it. So you can see if you go to position, you've got various options. You can move it a bit further down, you can stick it over my head, wherever you like. So as I say, I usually have it close to the bottom as part of that. Then once you play it through,
ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas.
right, not going to subject you to too much of that, but you then, what I then do is just check that I've got the right number, or the correct verses, and that the words do match what people are singing, because there are slightly different versions of songs and all of those basic bits of editing, and that yes, the words are following what's being sung, so that those fit in. Once you're happy with it and that's done, you can go back to your edit, remove the blue ones by pressing the clear all marks. That's the hollow blue triangle in the middle, and it's gone. And then that will play through all the way to the end, because that's where we set it to. And we're done. Right.
Does it synchronize itself with your head?
Yes, it synchronizes. It synchronizes really well, because we set at the beginning and the end where we know the music is, and we can put that in, and it will then synchronize generally fairly well. What I find sometimes, if it doesn't quite, sometimes because I might have added a bit at the end to say, oh, this is who wrote it or what have you, you can subsequently then move just the roll space, and that just sometimes allows it just to fit in a little bit better, and that's just a little bit of trial and error playing to make sure that it fits. But yes, generally it synchronizes really well. However, what we're going to do is we're going to do something slightly additional. What we're going to decide is that actually my singing is terrible, whereas Paul and Jane's singing is lovely. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this. We're going to give people a real treat, and rather than having to listen to me sing, they're going to get Paul and Jane's version of Ubi Caritas. So this is what I do when I'm usually inserting music. So we're going to just get rid of all that hard work and get rid of that. Right, so we know that this is where I've got my bit. So all I'm going to do, just move that out the way a bit, is I don't want that anymore. You can just pick that up and move the space between those, and I'm just going to delete it. So I'm just going to highlight it and delete it, because we're not going to use me, we're going to use Paul and Jane. I'm going to get rid of those marks again. Now, because we split my video into two parts, these bits will now move independently. All right, these are now independent bits of movies, so I can move this a bit further apart. And we're going to say, actually, I want something much nicer than me singing. So we're going to go back into log, and we're going to find a lovely version of Ubi Caritas. So click on that. Again, you need to import. Double clicking doesn't work. The number of times I've double clicked and assumed it will import, you have to click the import button. Okay, so now we've got Ubi Caritas has come up. We go back to edit, because that just brings us back to the sequence that we're working on. We can pick up the beautiful version of Ubi Caritas and stick it in there. Now, for Sunday services and for this one, what's quite nice is to have some sort of background image that goes with it that we can then put words over that we can roll up. This is where I use images from Unsplash or Pixabay, and I pick things that I think look nice or that fit with whatever we're doing, and so forth. So let's have a look for an image. So let's go back to log, go to local files. Now I keep these together in pictures, and I've got a special file called free to use images. These are the ones that I have downloaded from Pixabay or from Unsplash. And I've got a series of pictures of various things that I have used at various times. Well, we're talking vaguely about love, aren't we? Should we have that? Let's go for that one. Okay, partly because it allows me to show you some other bits and pieces if I want to. So we've got our heart there. It's now imported. Go back to edit. We can pick that up and put that into the video part. Again, it's too small. So if you go to the side of it, and it works both sides, but we can make that bigger. Okay. Now, if we want to do some of that sort of fading in and out sort of stuff, which is what I would normally do, I zoom in so you can see the little bit of space that we've got. So there's the bit where I've stopped talking, and there's the bit just before the music starts. Because these are not linked files, you need to do each of these individually, because this is obviously one sound file and one just image. But move those over so that it crosses over. Move that so it just crosses over a little bit. And then if you click on that, again, right clicking just in where that gap is. So you can see the white comes up, just right click, you get transitions, click on dissolve, add, and it will now add that little dissolve in. The other thing that I tend to do, because it keeps the sizing the same and makes life easier, and again is just nicer for some transitions, is I also do that for the sound. So if you now right click on the sound bit, the audio, you get a crossfade. It is worth doing this because when you then want to close gaps, it just keeps everything synced because you've got a crossfade which is the same size as your dissolve. Because if you now look, and this will be slightly different here, but because we've now moved this just to cover over a little bit to give that overlap that allows us to create the dissolve and the crossfade, we've now got a gap again. In this instance, because I've only dissolved one part of it, it is easier actually to just move it. So you can just pick it up and move the file. We go back across to where we were at the other end. Now we've created a gap. But you can see because we've got the crossfade and the dissolve in, that gap is the same on both sides. So when we go into that space, right click, close gap, done. Saves you having to move each individual bit and ensures that everything is nicely linked up. This is again the voice of experience. Having forgotten to do this at various points, it is then worth putting your fades and everything else in on the other side as well. So we're just going to have a look at this. So we're just going to go and touch over there. Do the same thing in terms of just touching over on my file. And again, we can insert a fade. So transition, dissolve, add. So we just fade across and again a crossfade. And again, they're equal size. So it makes life easier because having just moved it over this way, again, zoom in so you can see it better. We've got a gap again. Again, right click, close gap, and it's all sorted. Right. Well, let's say image is nice, but maybe you want it a bit bigger. So again, we can make those adjustments to our images in VFX. You go to VFX, again, plus, because the last thing we did was text, we're in text at the moment. Don't ask me what some of these other things do. I've never stylized anything or done plugins. I just use these basic ones. Go back to DVE and use the 3D DVE, because this allows you to do a bit of zooming in. You can't zoom in if you just use the 2D. You need to use the 3D. Now, the problem I found is that when you try and sort of zoom in and out, sometimes it's a little bit oversensitive. If you want, you can type into the boxes at the size that you actually want and say, well, actually, I don't want it there. I want it a bit bigger, minus 0.8. Sorry, not 0.08, 0.8. Yeah, that's what I like, or whatever. So you can adjust your sizes. And as I said before, you can adjust the position. So you say, actually, I want it to the side. And then we'll have the music going up the side. Okay. So you can move those things around. So that's what we'll do this time. So we zoomed in on it a bit, so it's a bit bigger as an image, and we've moved it to the side. And then we're going to adjust where we put the music. We've got two options as to how we now do this. We could say it is just Ubi Caritas Deus IBS. So I could just do it as a title. I could just put it in as a title. It'll just sit there and say Ubi Caritas Deus IBS. And that would be fine because that's relatively simple for this. But we'll just do the slightly more advanced version so that you know how to do it. So in the same way as we did before, obviously we need to, if I remember rightly, that's a play over, isn't it? You want a little bit of space so it starts to come before people start singing. As I say, you can subsequently adjust it, so don't worry if you don't get it quite right. And put your in marker, so the little blue triangle on this side on that bit. And then we need to go to the end. And put it back into VFX. Back to plus, which allows us to pick up the menu because we want to put in text. So we're not in DV, we want text, go to text. We're going to do a roll this time, because that will then go up the screen. So double click on it, and now you get the space to put your text. If I'd thought about it, I would have.
Et amor first.
Hmm?
It's
We
et
carry
amor.
us et amor, not Deus IBS yet.
Ruby characters.
Et amor.
Thank you. The
Deus IBS.
best. Okay, and we know that it's repeated lots of times. How many times did you sing it through?
I think it was 12 or 13, but I don't remember exactly.
So 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but
I only sang it 4 times. And I glued it. You glued it together lots.
right, we'll just.
Right, you lot.
I might shorten it for the actual thing because that's quite long for a complin, but right. Now when we play,
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus IBS.
see, much better than me. Right, same principles. You can make adjustments to all of this. First of all, I tend to put it bold. It just makes it a little bit bolder and easier to see. You can change the size of your text. bigger or smaller with size. Probably not a lot of point having an outline in this particular instance because a black outline on a black background isn't really very useful. But again, you can adjust your position. So you can move it so that it's on one side.
Mhm.
And you can choose your anchor point. It's centered at the moment. You can move it to the left or to the right, and then get your position as to where you have it. Left. I can't tell my left from my right. Can you tell? Okay, so you can then position it exactly where you want it, and it will then
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est.
Now, the other thing is you'll notice that often I have bigger gaps. For this, it probably works fine, but obviously you can put a bigger gap between them. So just press return and make the gaps whatever you want in terms of that. And you can put the same gaps between each one, and it will, because you've set the role, so because we set the spacing that's there, it will then keep it all within what you have there. So it does work quite well. So yeah, you would just put the same spacing in between everything. I'm not going to do it all now because that will be dull, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how that works.
Ubi caritas et amor.
Okay, once you finish that, go back to edit. As I say, I usually, and to not bore you tonight, I won't do all of those bits and pieces. I will then check that everything matches up. But as I say, when you've got standard hymns, it all just tends to fit without too much trouble. Sometimes there are a few little bits of adjustment that are needed just to get it to fit right, and that's just a little bit of playing around. But as I say, you can change the position of the roll, so you can make it slightly bigger at one end or the other as you need. Once you've finished all of that, again, get rid of the marks, because if you then start picking other things up, then it just means that you end up breaking your video up into little pieces by mistake, and it's just slightly annoying. But as I say, the undo button is your friend when you've just done that. Okay, and that's basically most of what we need for this one, which is a relatively simple service. And now we're going to just do the finished parts. So in the same way as I did before, if we want to put a fade in, you can do exactly the same on the other end. So if we go to the audio, again, worth just making it a bit bigger. Again, if you click, so you get one little square near the red line, click so that it's further away, and bring it down so it's starting from the mute. Now when we play it, it will fade in, which gives you, again, that slightly better sound. Go back to edit. Right, what are the other bits that I want to put in? I want to put the notices in. So the notices that I usually have, I think I'm missing one of them, but it doesn't matter. This is for illustration purposes. So normally I've got, here are the services that we've got coming up. It's Tuesday, so there will be the Ash Wednesday service to mention. So I can put that one in. And I always have my acknowledgements. So the acknowledgements in this particular instance are the music that we're using, where the liturgies come from, and our CCLI licenses. I also like to just say bless you for worshipping with us, because it's lovely to be worshipping with people, even if it is remotely. Then I change the size of these so that they're much bigger than I need to start with. We'll do the same thing for fading as we did before. So again, you can see I've left a gap at the end, which just gives me plenty of space to be able to put that in for fading. Again, I'm just going to cover it over a little bit this way. I can now put a transition in exactly the same way. So again, you can see that it gradually fades into the next part. Then move, as it's fading in, I'm going to move that right to the edge, to the last bit of meat, and then that will fade in. Just a reminder, because we've moved this a little bit across, there will now be a gap. Go back to find the gap and close the gap. Otherwise, you just end up with a little black bit in your video. So if ever you've noticed any little black bits in any of the videos that you've been watching, that's when I forgot to close the gap. Again, just to zoom in to make it easier. Just drop that over a little bit. And again, you can put it in a transition. When you're just doing images, you can actually just do it with just the image across one way. You don't need to do it both ways. When you're doing videos, you do need to do one way, one the other way to give you the crossover. But when you're just doing images like this, it will actually work with just going one way, and you can add your transition in. And the same, I generally make the acknowledgements slightly shorter because they're not quite so exciting to read. Again, transitions, add, and you're done. Let's make sure everything's tidy. Again, although when you do it, Lightworks it won't try and make this last bit a video unless you tell it that you want a trailing bit of black. But I normally just close the gap, say, there it is, I've completed what I want. All you need to do then is export your video. So again, if you right click on this sort of bit of video anywhere you like, you will get a whole series of things that come up. The bit you're looking for is export. In the free version, I've got the paid for version, but actually, you know, it doesn't add a lot more functionality that I particularly. The only thing you will be able to export as is this one here that says h.264/mp4. As that's pretty much what we mostly use anyway, that's not a problem. So that's your MP4 file, which is how a lot of things come. If you click on that, you will then get a dialog box, and it says, right, where do you want to, the first thing to do is to make sure you're saving it where you want to. It will automatically come up to where you want it to be. So make sure that you're saving it in the right place. This is Compline, it's not morning prayer. So just find the place that you want to save it. So again, it's just going through your files. So if I go to my videos in 2021, I've got my Complines, okay? Once you've done it, press OK at the bottom. If you do not press OK, it just reverts back to where it was before. So press OK. We are now saving it where we want to. And choose your file name and press start. But before we do that, there are a few bits and pieces up here in terms of size, rate and compression. At one point, my videos were a little bit grainy and so forth because I'd upgraded to the next version up, and this had automatically gone into a low quality thing. So you want to make sure that you are in a reasonably high quality. This has changed recently. I knew what it was in the previous version. So at the moment I have left it at 720p and 24 frames a second. I think we can probably actually do 180. And we want high. Leave it as it says audio track, stereo track, that's fine. And the sample size and so forth, don't worry about those. Those don't need to be changed. But the only bit to check is that your size and rate. We want it in HD and we want it in
1080.
1080p. Okay, which is basically your widescreen version, which is what works best on Facebook and so forth. Once you've done that, press start. I'm not going to press start now in case you want me to show you anything else or fiddle around, because it takes a while. because it's obviously then processing all of the different bits and pieces. It takes a little bit of computer processing power. So for Complin, it takes about 5 to 7 or 8 minutes, depending on the length of it, to write the video. For a Sunday service, it can take up to half an hour to just sit there and go through. You can do other things in the background, as long as your computer has enough processing power. It can make it a little bit slower. My laptop begins to go a little bit slower when I'm doing it, but you know, it will then write that. You can then use that MP4. You can post that onto Facebook, onto YouTube, share it via Google Drive, all sorts of things. So a whole series of different ways in which we can do things. Yeah, so that's the basics. As I say, I've shown you a little bit of how you can play with it to create split screens. So I mean, if you want, I'll just show you that very briefly. So we're not going to save that. Let's just say we wanted to have me with a nice picture of the heart next to me. You can add additional video or audio channels, as many as you like. If you click on that, you can actually switch them off and on so that you're not messing around with them if you need to. But if you right click again on there, you can get tracks and you can add tracks. So I'm going to add a video track in this case. So you get now another line here. I'm going to just, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to stick that in there. We'll make it a bit bigger. We're going to have it. So funny things happen, just ignore that. So we're going to have this just across this bit. Okay, so now when we go to the VFX, the video function, we want to make some adjustments, because when you put a video track on top of another one, basically one is going to obscure the other. You're not going to see it. So if we now go into here and we go back into our DVE, go into the 3D DVE, because that gives you the most options. You can now see that we got V1 and V2. So you can now move and play with each of those as you wish. The one we've just inserted is V1. So what we can now do is I can move V1 across and I can crop. So I can make it smaller and I can move it around. So actually, no, I want to, moved it too far. I want it, I'll have the flaming torch on one side. If I wanted, I could go to V2, which is the other one, which is me. And again, I can go into 3D DVE and I can make adjustments to that if I wanted to as well. For some reason it's left around on me at the moment. But you can make adjustments to where those different parts are, and you can then add that in, and that will then play basically, throughout that will be in place. So for last Sunday service, where I put images next to Noel doing the prayers, that's basically what I did. So shove Noel to one side, put the images on the other side, and then faded them across if you wanted to do multiple images. Obviously, you can put those any way you like, and you can fade them in and fade them out. If you want, there's again a crop function. So you can crop, and again, it's left, right, top, bottom. So you can crop your image. Each bit, top, and so forth, and bottom. And again, say I just wanted it somewhere else, you can move it around anywhere within that. So that gives you the options. And again, you can put another video in, so you can have more than one image on there. You can put multiple things, as many as you like, ultimately, because you can just add another video track, add another one, squeeze it down, put it where you want. So there's a lot of creativity and flexibility that exists in it. And so once you're done, that's what you will end up with. And when you export your file, that's what you'll get, what you see on the screen. So this one, which we've been having a look at throughout, is basically the preview of where you are on here, what it looks like and what's going on. So that's basically what I spend quite a lot of time doing. The key thing now is to say, the dreaded thing, which I'll not promise I can answer everything, but are there any questions or bits?
Just on that very last thing, Ed, for things like last Sunday, if Gillian and I had recorded our part and put together our own thing in Lightworks, doing that with a split screen and picture one side and person on the other, could we then export that as an MP4 file to you for inserting within a service?
Yes.
Presumably it's just another file to add in there.
It's just another file. I mean, interestingly, the other night I had already done the compline. I put it all together, and in the prayers I prayed for James Bradley, who was sick, and then I heard from Joe that James had died. His father had died. I'm going, right. I'd literally cut out the tiny little section from the final video and moved it, and then just re-edited it so he was actually then in the list of those we were praying for who had died. So yes, I can then adjust from a new video that people have created. I can then use that, absolutely, no problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. I'm going to have to go have another meeting now, so. But thanks, Ed. That's been really informative. I hope everybody else has found it informative. Really good. Look forward to having a play with that. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. I'll see you soon.
I know.
No.
Any other questions? I say there are other things that you can do, but those are the basics of what I do. And as I say, I've recorded this, so I will put it onto YouTube or something, so that if anybody wants to then refer back to it and go, how was it you did that? Hopefully you can find that particular part and give it another go. But I have to say,
You can't just send us a copy of the recording, can you?
I can, yes, I can. What I can do is I'll also put it onto Google Drive, and I'll give you a link, so you'll be able to download the video. I can do that.
That'd be good. Thanks, Ed. Because
so
I'm sure I've not taken it all in, but
yeah, I mean, it's all well and good because I'm sitting here, but until you do it yourself and go, oh, he made it look so easy. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. This is a lot of trial and error along the way, and learning new things as I went along, saying, well, actually now I want to be able to do X, Y, or Z, and now how do I do that? And by playing around, messing things up along the way. So this is hopefully will save you some of that pain and heartache along the way. But as I say, this button here, this one here, the undo button, is incredibly useful, because when you go, what on earth's going on? What's happened? This has gone all horribly wrong. You can go back quite several steps. It doesn't go back infinitely. It has a limited lifespan, but you can go back and try again. I mean, one of the things that I haven't talked about particularly, which can be useful, is you can have bins. And the bins just allow you to create subfolders, if you like. You can create something within that. You can put particular files that you're working on within that, and so forth. So,
where does it auto save to, Ed?
No, it's just within its own little program system. don't ask me precisely where it is.
Right.
It just allows you to go back a bit. It's within, basically, it's within its project file that it does that. And then when you open it up, it'll remember, you know, the last things that you did. The one thing I would say is that video files, you know, they take up a lot of memory over time. So I've now taken to, you know, once I've got the completed videos, is I'm now deleting the original files that I used, because otherwise, you clog up your system. I've got now hundreds of videos. I mean, I've got a large external hard drive on which I'm just keeping all of the old stuff. But once you got your final video, you're not likely to go back and try and do anything else with a lot of these sorts of things and redo it. So I don't need to keep those. And obviously most of it's there. As I say, the other thing is that, you know, if you mess things up, it's not a problem, because you've seen that I can cut out the rubbishy bits like me singing. So you know, all of the bit when, you know, somebody has phoned up while I'm in the middle of recording something, you know, those bits are all removed, you'll be pleased to hear, because it's, again, it's easy to do. You put the marker in, you can cut off the bits that you don't need. I mean, let me just create an empty sequence very quickly. You can create another one. You can do as many things as you like within your project. So here's another one where we're going to do something. We're going to drop me in there just to say you can just move your video file. So if you said, actually, you know, I don't want the end bit, I just want to stop there, you can move it and just cut off those bits very easily. So yeah.
Thank you.
Very good indeed.
I was going to, if I can just, what I will do is I will just pop into the chat for you. I'll stop sharing for now. I'm just going to pop into the chat a couple of websites. I can find where I put them. I was actually trying to be prepared. So I'll just put, in case you haven't found it, the Lightworks link, but also so those three are the links in the chat for Lightworks itself, which is the program that I'm using, and then Pixabay and Unsplash. So basically those are places where you can look for images. Pixabay I find is really good. Unsplash is good, and sometimes just has those particular things that Pixabay doesn't. But those allow you to...
Can't see that at the moment.
Oh, just a minute, it's gone straight to Ruth. I told it to go to everybody. Everyone. Let's try that again. Everyone. There we go. It's all right, because Ruth sent me a message too. So those are the things. Let me just give you a moment. I'll show you one of them. Let's just share screen again and see if I can find the right thing. I've got too much gubbins open at the moment, as usual. That's the one. Right. So this is Pixabay. Oh no, this is Unsplash actually. So you just get a search thing. You want to pick Jesus. You will then get a series of images, and you find the one that fits what you're trying to do. So, you know, lots of images of Jesus in different ways and so forth. And there are, you know, this one's good. The other one is Pixabay, which does exactly the same. So we want all sorts of different images. That's quite a nice one. And sometimes just I'm looking for things, I might not want it immediately, but I just download it. So if you click on the image, and then basically it's a free download. So you just free download, and you just click download. You have to say you're not a robot. and then you download the image. That will automatically go into your downloads file. I then move it to where I want it. You can, if you want, and I have done on occasions, just made some donations just to, because I'm using huge numbers of free images of these lovely people. And it does say that crediting isn't required, but linking back is appreciated and does allow people to know that they're producing these things. So I probably ought to stick that at the end at some point. Images courtesy of Pixabay and Unsplash. But those are where I get a lot of images from. And yeah. Then you can go back and search for all the rest of them and go, yeah, whatever's nice. Maybe not that one. Okay, so to say, those are the things that I've been messing around with. So I hope that's helpful.
In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save, till on that cross as Jesus died,